It's a beautiful morning out here on the Anhinga Trail in the Everglades National Park. And I'm out here today trying out the Canon 800mm f11 lens. Canon came out with this lens earlier, I think in 2021, for the RF mount, and it's for the mirrorless cameras that Canon's manufacturing and continuing to perfect as time goes on. And I bought this lens about a month ago because I was really interested in how it was going to perform on birds. And I used it for the first time a couple of weeks ago at Bosque del Apache out in New Mexico, and then used it again here. And after a couple of weeks of using it, I think I finally got this thing figured out. So for the past couple of weeks, I've used this lens extensively, and I think I finally got it figured out. And so this lens definitely has some pros and some cons. The pros first is it's 800mm, and it's so compact, and it's super easy to carry. It's super light, it focuses responsively, and it's just a breeze to carry into the field. Secondly, if you use the Canon's crop mode in the camera on the R5 especially, it'll give you like 1280mm and one single lens that weighs like 2.5 pounds. It's just crazy how light and how sharp this lens is. The third thing is sharpness. It is a pretty sharp lens. I've looked at pictures zoomed all the way in, and when you use good technique and proper technique, it's as sharp as any lens I've got in my arsenal. Now the cons are, and there are some cons to this lens too. The cons are it's f11. That's kind of the elephant in the room. So my thought is, if you're shooting pictures of birds against the blue sky, the f11 really doesn't matter all that much, because you're not trying to get a really shallow depth of field. Now me personally, my shooting style is I really love to have a really shallow, thin depth of field, and I like shooting my big lens, my Canon 500mm f4. I shoot it at f4, f5.6 all the time to really get the background isolated from the rest of the scene. But with this 800mm f11 lens, you know, of course, you've got some limitations. You're going to have some limitations in aperture. The backgrounds are going to look different. You're going to have some limitations in overall shutter speed because of the way aperture affects shutter speed. But with good technique, you can actually mimic really shallow depth of field. The one thing I've been doing when I've used it on birds that are perched somewhere is I just pay attention to my background and try to line up in a way where the background's far away from the subject, and that way you can get it out of focus. And that's it's not exactly the way I want it to look, but it's close enough, especially in a pinch. Now, I'm not going to pass up a picture just because it doesn't have the background like I envision it to be. I'm still going to use the lens. But now here's another thing I don't like about this lens. Now, granted, it is compact, but it's only compact in the carry mode. Once you have to use it, it extends and telescopes out a little bit. Now, that doesn't make the lens unwieldy to use, but I'm afraid using it in the field, it does introduce some dirt into the element where you slide the lens back and forth from the locked position to the unlocked position. Secondly, and this kind of bothers me, is you spend, I mean, the lens isn't expensive as lens goes. It's still, I think, $900 is what I paid for it, but it doesn't come with a lens hood. And so that bothers me a little bit. So I've got to pay another extra 50 or 60 bucks to buy a lens hood when they're available, because they haven't been available yet. And so those are some minor things, but again, the thing that bothers me most, the f11 doesn't bother me that much. The 800mm is great. The thing that really bothers me the most is the way it telescopes in and out. I'm no optical physicist, but I'm guessing the reason why it's done that way is just to make it compact when you carry it, and that way you can extend it out when you're ready to use it, and it's going to take up a little more room. But the f11, although it is workable, won't be my ultimate go-to lens. Now, here's my overall assessment. Will this 800mm f11 replace my 500mm f4? It won't. But I look at it like a 50mm 1.4. It's not going to replace my f4. It's just another tool in my tool bag that I can use to take pictures. And so in this case, I think it's a great lens for birds in flight, especially if you're on a bright day and you've got blue skies and the background doesn't matter. You're just taking pictures of birds against the blue sky. It's a great lens. Low light conditions, it's really got some limitations because of the f11. I don't want to sacrifice, I know I could crank up the ISO, but I just don't want to sacrifice the way that the image looks, the noise in the image, just to get a picture. So low light conditions, early in the morning, late in the evening, getting those really soft out of focus backgrounds, I'm going to use my 500mm. But again, if I'm out and I need a really portable lens and I'm just going to shoot birds in flight, this 800mm f11, it shows a lot of promise. To double down on that same point again, it won't replace my 500mm f4. nor is it meant to. It's like all the other lens I have in my toolkit. It's just one lens hopefully complements another, and I have that specific lens for a specific purpose, for a specific job that I need to do, and that's where I see this 800mm f11 lens from Canon fitting into my gear bag.